Behind the Scene with David Bedian. Today I'm at Tel Aviv University at the Institute for Strategic Studies, I think it's called here, if I'm not mistaken. And Dr. Arnon Groiss is with me. We just made a presentation. It's called the INS. In English, it comes out to the INSS. I have to figure out.
Institute for National Security Studies.
There it is. Okay, all we have to do is read the wall. Institute for National Security Studies. And the INSS is a very influential think tank. And I brought Dr. Groiss today to speak about his work. And I also made what you've already seen on this program are videos of children learning in the United Nations Relief and Work Agency, or also known as UNRWA, schools, where the children actively learn how to be violent. So we show those films, and then Dr. Groiss showed basically what is the conclusion of 18 years of research in the new Palestinian Authority school books. So you want to mention some of the highlights of what you presented today, Arnon?
Yes, the Palestinian Authority has produced or published new series of books for all grades, beginning in 2016 and ending in 2018. And the new books are much worse than the older books because they take the delegitimization of Israel and the Jews, the Jewish presence in the country, and the demonization of both, and they call for war instead of peace education to the extremes. Even talking about what should be done with the Jews, I mean hints only, not full sentences. And also the omission, almost total omission of the name Israel. They don't say today that Israel kills children, Israel this, that, and that. But does that and that. But Israel, the Zionist occupation killed the children. The Zionist occupation does this and that. And also the right of return is perceived now as a violent return with the elimination of the state of Israel and the so-called expulsion of the Jews from this country.
You did bring a book which talks about extermination of the Jews. It was very clear. It was very shocking.
Yeah, it's one verse of a poem. It says, "I shall sacrifice my blood for the land of the noble ones, and I will remove the usurper," which is a code name for Israel. I will remove the usurper from my country and shall exterminate, ubid in Arabic, exterminate the scattered remnants of the foreigners. So this is, I think, full expression of the extermination of Jews in this country, 6 million.
I must mention that the translations of Dr. Groiss's work are found on our website, IsraelBehindTheNews.com. And for people who are in Sweden, there's excerpts which are in Swedish. Also, on the top of the website, you'll see a Swedish flag, and actually happy to get. You'll be able to get into the work that Dr. Groiss has done there. How long have you been working on this?
On this particular research since 2015.
Mm-hmm. And when did you begin working on the issue of the Palestinian Authority school books?
In 2000.
In 2000. Now, what was special? What happened in 2000 that was special in terms of the Palestinian Authority school books?
Well, the Palestinian Authority it was established in 1994 and received immediately all powers or all issues of education in the West Bank and Gaza. But they started to issue school books only in 2000, and I right away started to follow these books and study these books and see how they treat the Israeli Jewish other and how is their attitude to the issue of peace with that other in these books.
I'll never forget, Arnon, when our agency, the Center for Near East Policy Research, brought you to Washington with these first new school books in 2005. And we were sitting with Congressman Brad Sherman.
Yes.
And it's probably one of the few times in my life I've ever seen smoke coming out of someone's ears. It was really something to see. He was looking at it because he had been told that there was a curriculum for peace, and there it was.
Yeah, well, as I remember once, the head of the Islamic Jihad, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, he was called Fathi Shaqaqi, was interviewed live on television and said, we love peace, we want peace, but we don't want peace with Israel. We want peace without Israel. So this is the case also here.
Yeah. Well, I'll never forget it. If I can play with it, people who know the English language well, during the 6 Day War, we were American children watching the news in the United Nations, and the Syrian ambassador picked up the New York Times. Israel wants peace. Yes, peace of Jordan, peace of Syria, peace of Lebanon, peace of Egypt. Okay, but getting back to this issue, what are some of the other motifs that you've seen in the school books that I think that our listeners or the people watching this program today would not know about?
First of all, the disappearance of the name Israel. Israel used to be, it was featured in the older books before 2016. And there were many pieces about Israel. Israel destroy our villages. Israel kills our children. Israel assassinate our leaders. Israel steals water. Israel does this and that and so on. But now they put Zionist occupation instead. Even the agreement of the armistice agreement between Israel and the Arab states in 1949 is called the agreement between the Zionist occupation and the states of Egypt, Syria, Jordan, and Lebanon, and so on.
I must point out that one of the questions asked today at the conference was why in the last 2 years, and we have on our website, IsraelBehindTheNews.com, the list of all the nations that give money to UNRWA and the Palestinian Authority, and 54% of the money given to UNRWA goes into education, and the biggest new contributor is Saudi Arabia, and they went from $9 million a few years ago to $100 million now. So they could, and they have people on the ground visiting the schools and encouraging the radicalization of the schools, which is very important. And one of the people who was, remember the response of one of the people here today. Well, what about Saudi Arabia as this moderating force? Well, this is simply not the case.
I'm not in a position to judge Saudi Arabia. I'm not a politician. I follow Middle Eastern affairs. I'm quite familiar with it. I'm not really sure about what's going behind the scenes in Saudi Arabia or between Saudi Arabia and Israel. I just know that the basic point of view, Saudi Arabia and other Arab states, even the moderate ones, so-called moderate ones, is anti-Israeli. I mean, Israel should not exist, and Palestine or parts of Palestine or Saudi Arabian Palestine or under the control of Saudi Arabia should exist instead.
What's very interesting about Saudi Arabia, which is having all this good public relations these days because they're helping Israel vis-a-vis Iran. You know, we say the enemy of my enemy is my friend in all Arabic. How does that sound in Arabic, by the way?
No, it sounds أنا وأخوي على ابن عمي وأنا وابن عمي على غريب. Okay. I and my brother against our cousin, and I am and my cousin against the foreigner. So Saudi Arabia, Israel is not a friend of Saudi Arabia. Israel is the enemy of Saudi Arabia, but a lesser enemy. Iran is much worse, much more dangerous.
What's interesting about Saudi Arabia in terms of the Arab world, everyone knows that it has a peace treaty with with Jordan and with Egypt.
Yes.
And an armistice agreement with Lebanon and with Syria. No agreement with Iraq, and Iraq is basically non-existent at this point. But there's never been any even armistice agreement with Saudi Arabia. We're talking about the 6 countries that attacked Israel in 1948.
Yeah, but Saudi Arabia came to Palestine in 1948 as part of the Egyptian army.
Oh, okay, fine. But they've never surrendered.
Not independent.
Mm-hmm. But Saudi Arabia has never made any pretense about making peace with Israel, or has it?
No, as far as I know, no.
It's very, very important. How, in your opinion, will be the best way to get the word out about what education in the Palestinian Authority is all about? How are people going to learn about it?
You mean the fundamentals of it?
Sure, of course.
Yeah. Well, the legitimization of both the existence of the state of Israel as a sovereign state and the existence or the presence of the Jews in this country. We are talking about 6 million Jews right now. including the denial of the existence of Jewish holy places in the country. This is one fundamental. Second fundamental is demonization of both Jews, not only in the context of the conflict, but also religiously as enemies of Prophet Muhammad in Arabia, for example. And demonization of Israel, of course, more than 30 accusations against Israel, or the Zionist occupation rather, right now. And the third and final fundamental is call for armed or violent struggle for the liberation of the whole of Palestine from the river to the sea instead of peace education. And terror and the right of return and anything like that, and also the religious ideals of jihad and so on, are part and parcel of that struggle for liberation.
Okay, one other thing now it's being brought up in the parliament in Germany. Germany has doubled its funds for UNRWA and for Palestinian Authority education. Why do you think it might be important to bring this to the attention of the German people and the German policymakers?
Because Germany is one of the basic donors, and Germany is a democracy. It's not unlike Saudi Arabia. I mean, the people have a say about how their money, tax money, is going to be spent, and therefore we should go and approach the German public, and not only the German public, also Japanese public and public in other countries that donate or the donor state to the Palestinian Authority and UNRWA.
How do you think it is that there's an automatic assumption that children who learn in the United Nations school are going to turn out a little bit better?
No, they are not, because the curriculum is the same, and the behavior of the teachers who are Hamas members in Gaza, at least, is the same, and the atmosphere is the same, and there will be no. I don't discern any change, any nuance between UNRWA schools and the schools of non-UNRWA bodies like the Palestinian government or Hamas.
No, I understand that the UNRWA students all study the school books of the Palestinian Authority.
Yes.
Okay. And now, why is it that there's an assumption that school books produced by the Palestinian Authority would be promoting reconciliation and peace?
Because those people haven't read the books.
Okay. I think that's an easy enough answer. And what is the way to influence governments to put some basic conditions on this aid? What do you think?
I think that the books of both nations, of all nations in the Middle East, should educate for peace. And in more detailed points, the other party or the rival party should be considered as a party with some rights and interests that should be reckoned with, and the other party should be regarded, and the individual of that party should be regarded as human beings, and peace should be educated, advocated in all parts of the curriculum rather than the armed liberation struggle. And this is what you find actually in the Israeli school books. Well, there is no other solution rather than peace.
Right. When was the peace curriculum introduced into the Israeli school books?
At least after '67, or I haven't researched Israeli books at that time, but I'm familiar with Israeli books since the '90s, and peace was there all the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So peace is an integral part of the curriculum
in Israel.
In Israel, it's very, very, very important to emphasize that. The opposite is happening on the other side. I would say, by the way, that one of the reasons why people do not know about this so well, our friends, our colleagues in UNRWA hired a public relations firm. It's called Marathon Strategies, which makes sure they plant news items in the media on a daily basis that the school books are innocuous and that the children are innocent, and that perhaps all they want is peace. What's interesting, of course, is the fact that they are in refugee camps for now 70 years. Under what premises? What's the premise of them being in the refugee camps?
There is a special UN agency called UNRWA, which perpetuates the conflict. Keeping the Palestinian descendants of the original refugees in camps under very severe conditions, and raising among them the hope that they would sometime return to their ancient or former homes inside Israel, which will become Palestine. They don't believe in coming back to Israel. They consider it coming back to liberated Palestine.
By the way, I suggest that perhaps the editor of the show can show it on the screen. There's a certain website very popular in the UNRWA camps called PalestineRemembered.com. PalestineRemembered.com, so that every child can locate the places where they came from in 1948. And I wanted to say the following. 30 years ago, when we would go into an UNRWA camp, you would say to a child, "Where are you from?" He would say Jaffa, and then start laughing. And then 20 years ago, we would hear the child say, "I'm from Jaffa and I'm going back there." Now we hear the child say, "Oh, I'm from Jaffa, I'm going back there. I want to kill everybody there." So we've seen this progression from a nostalgic issue, almost a joke, to something very serious.
Yeah, and this is the achievements of the Palestinian Authority since 1994.
Now, incidentally, one of the scoops I have for the viewing audience here is that the way in which we got the school books in the first place was when I asked Arafat if he's going to say words of peace in the Arabic language. He says, "You have to see our school books." So I felt that this was my opportunity. I said, "Can you make that arrangement?" And he did. I don't think he expected me to follow up, but we did. And as I've mentioned in many of my public presentations, the first diplomat to make an issue out of this was the Pope John Paul II's ambassador in Israel, whose name in the Middle East, whose name was Archbishop Pietro Sambi, and he saw the books, and he was asked to see the books by the Pope. And the reason he was asked him because the Pope was very concerned because he'd visited an UNRWA camp near Bethlehem called the Heisha, and he heard the children screaming "Itbach Elihu" and "Kill all the Jews." He said this reminds him of what happened when he lived in Nazi Germany, actually in Poland, during the Nazi occupation. So the Pope asked to see the books, and I used to joke with Archbishop Sambi, "Who am I to refuse a papal request?" And that's how the story got out for everyone to see. Well, I want to thank you, Dr. Groiss, for being my guest today on Behind the Scene with David Bedian. I think it's a very important thing to see, and again, make sure that you not leave this only it's good to see our friendly faces, but do your homework. Go on our website, IsraelBehindTheNews.com, and make sure that the parliamentarians in your country see it, and people who want to sponsor us to have public forums and show this material. There's a donation button there, how you can see it. And what's very important is that we're privately funded. We don't work with governments. Yes, we pay our taxes to the Israeli government, and maybe many of you pay the taxes to the American or the Swedish government. But this is done independently and in such a way that it's pure and clear and without any constraints or restraints. But thank you again, Dr. Groiss, for being a guest and Behind the Scene with David Bedian. All the best.